Hi everyone, it's Raina. So this video is looking at the astrological chart of Nicki Minaj. And I've really been doing these female rappers lately for whatever reason. Well, I did Britney Spears and I'm going to be doing Christina Aguilera pretty soon. But I think one of the things that is very intriguing is that they're all born within the same period of time. I just happened to notice when I was plugging in Nicki's information that she was born in 1982. So it's, Christina, I think, was also born in December of 1982. I was noting as well that these are Sagittarian women. Let's just review. Britney is a Sag. Christina is a Sag. Nicki is a Sag. Taylor Swift is a Sag. Miley, I did Miley, and she's not a rapper, but I did her chart yesterday. She's a Sag. And there's somebody else. Nelly Furtado, but I don't know how active she is these days. And so, but with some of these people, they're born within a year of each other. So I had just remarked that Miley, because Miley's different, she's younger, but she's turning 30 as I record this earlier on in 2022. Miley was born in 1992, so she's turning 30, while Nicki is turning 40, being born in 1982. So that is really wild as well, because these are milestone years, obviously. But I mean, plus, I remember them way back when. Nicki, I don't know when I first saw her. So, Nicki Minaj was born on December 8th, 1982 in Trinidad, Tobago. I don't know how you pronounce that, but it's weird that it's like one thing. Trinidad and Tobago. I guess it's like, I don't know if those are two islands that they just are connected. So she is a sun in Sagittarius. She has a moon in Virgo, Mercury in Sag, Venus in Sag, Mars in Capricorn, and Aquarius rising. Actually, December 8th is a date when there's a lot of celebrities who are born on that date. I mean, famous singers like Jim Morrison was born on the same day. And who else or date? Sammy Davis Jr., Sinead O'Connor, among other celebrities. So, as someone who has the combination of Sun and Sag and Moon and Virgo myself, I understand when I saw a headline when I was kind of researching this where they mentioned Nicki being snarky, because I think that's really true of that combination. And you can see in some of Nicki's videos that the way that she acts is kind of like, she makes these faces that are kind of dismissive, and she says things in her very, very vulgar raps that are dissing people. But there's always this kind of a flair for, when it comes to it, even if it's like super crude, there's a cleverness, in other words. And I think that is because the Virgo can hone in on details, and the Sag has that ability to make them entertaining. There's literary talent with both Sag and Virgo, and she does have Mercury in Sag and Venus in Sagittarius as well. Nicki's rising sign of Aquarius is not surprising to me in terms of how she carries herself. The rising sign can be the persona that people see when they first meet you. And of course, when somebody's a celebrity, the persona is everything, because a lot of times the people will hide their true selves and promote this kind of facade, uh, sometimes as a protective measure so that they have something to themselves. The people like Marilyn Monroe, or the I'll have to do her chart, but somebody who kind of really projects a lot of vulnerability and seems to be just completely an open book. Those people put themselves in a kind of danger because they could be so open that they have nothing left for themselves. And so the facade becomes a very effective barrier from being swallowed alive, by the public when you're a celebrity. So the Aquarius rising sign can be very, I was going to say bizarre, but it's very intriguing. There's an electricity with Aquarius. So people find such individuals charismatic, even if they find them off-putting at the same time. It really doesn't matter, because they see these people as, they're like lightning rods, and even if they go against the grain, they still garner attention. It's like that saying, there's no such thing as bad publicity. But even in terms of appearance, I've been very interested in how Nicki changes her look. She has very colorful, even cartoonish kinds of outfits that she sometimes puts on her videos. And just even her videos themselves, to me, are very entertaining and visually appealing. And that's another thing that Doja Cat, I feel like the two of them have in common, is that their videos are really on point. Now, some people could argue, well, that's just superficial because that's hiding mediocre content with a flashy image. And I would argue that both of these artists are people who also contribute music that, it's not something that I'm sitting there listening to 24/7 for sure, but it's something that I have definitely listened to, and it has stayed with me. There was some kind of distinctive quality to it, whereas a lot of the stuff that is being produced, it's almost like it's in a factory, and they just push a button and they rearrange the melody a little bit, but you can still pick out the same thing that you heard before, and it's just kind of one thing after the other. One thing I wanted to focus on, though, is the sexuality angle with some of these young women who are doing this, because they seem to, and I mentioned this with Doja Cat, and even I just did Cardi B's chart, is the stripper angle, whether they were literally a stripper like Cardi B was, or whether they are emulating one, imitating one in their videos. And there's a man standing there kind of assessing them and being aroused by them. Like, what is up with that in 2022 when I'm recording this? And I think a lot of people, well, I shouldn't say a lot, but I did get with, when I mentioned about Cardi B stripping, they assumed that I'm judging that and saying, oh, wow, that was, this low point in her life. And it's not like that at all. I'm not judging it on that level. But I'm just kind of comparing it to the kind of messages that we are receiving in the mainstream media from people who claim to be feminists, that are like activist feminists, that are kind of hyper feminists. And why is this such a common theme in pop culture in the 2020s when there's been this talk about girl power? Well, they will say probably that this is self-empowerment, that a woman can own her sexuality. But it seems to me that it's almost regressive, that it's the man is the one who is, objectifying the woman, and she is trying to be, more outrageously, openly sexual than the next woman and that kind of thing. And why? Why do you need that man's approval? And when I look at Nicki's chart for any signs of like trauma and things like that, she has Chiron in the fourth house of home and family. And by the way, I don't know her background. Maybe some of you do. If you do, fill in the blanks. Leave a comment below and let me know if you know about her life back in the islands. But I noticed that Miley had Chiron in the fourth too. In Miley's case, I believe it had something to do with her father hitting it big right about around the time that she was born. And so that probably created a lot of rootlessness, chaos in her home life. And she might not have been able to live kind of that stable existence. Although, I always thought that she lived in Tennessee and she just had this kind of laid back life. So I don't know about her situation. Neither do I know about Nicki's situation. The fourth house can be the mother. So did Nicki have a mother who was there for her? Who knows? But one of the things that I do see here is that she has a square between the moon and Venus. If somebody has this kind of square, they can have a difficulty giving or receiving love. And when you combine that with Chiron in the fourth house, as well as she has a square between Mars and Pluto, which is the classic sign of abuse, and sometimes this can be very, brutal sometimes. And Pluto can be sexual. It can be all kinds of abuse. And by the way, this is not me trying to imply anything about Nicki. I'm just telling you what I see in people's charts, because I've done this. I've done 1,100 charts, something. I've done over 1,000 charts. So this kind of thing comes up, but it's very interesting when you also see it as it relates to these other placements. And certainly if somebody has trauma, let's say a girl is sexually abused and maybe she's also physically abused. You can make a case that sexual abuse is a form of physical abuse, but I'm talking about being beaten, hit, whatever you want to call it. Do you think somebody is going to have trust issues after that? Yeah, and so the moon square Venus can be like that. Like even if the person has a good person coming up to them, wanting to be with them, they may not trust that that's okay. They may think that that person's going to hurt them. And because her Venus is in Sagittarius, she may have an attitude towards love that is very kind of open-ended, and, she wants her freedom at all costs. Same with having Aquarius rising. And like I said, she's got her sun in Sag. So this kind of thing can indicate somebody who doesn't really want to get close to somebody. I don't even know if she is connected to anyone right now, Nicki. I don't think she has kids. So that's more of that Sagittarian thing of like that freedom at any cost, the Aquarian thing. And, when I was talking about the vulgarity of her songs, one of the things that I notice sometimes with these young women is that they treat love almost as if it is this, like they don't believe it really exists. With Nicki, I never hear that kind of softening in her heart. Like it's always like, if I think of Anaconda, it's always like these very vulgar types of things, talking about sexual conquests and behaviors, but not necessarily love. Now, Doja Cat is different, and Doja Cat's sun sign is Libra. So there you go. That could explain it. And I forgot what her chart is like, but I mean, I think sometimes with men and women, if they have been hurt, they may tend to emphasize sexual conquests over love because they just don't trust love. They fear it, fear intimacy. But speaking of intimacy, that's the area that the 8th house represents. And Nicki has the moon here. This is like having the moon in Scorpio. So there can be very difficult emotions that the person has to contend with. And again, if they have gone through abuse, it's very hard for a person to just turn the other cheek. This can be the area where the shadow self really is alive and well, and this is the area for shadow work. But you have to know that you have a shadow before you can do anything about it. And when people have been the victim of abuse, it's very easy to focus on their victimhood and not like, okay, so where do we go from here? What do we do about these feelings that have come about because the person has been abused by somebody else, and their feelings of like, this isn't fair, this is an outrage. What do you do with those kinds of feelings? So that's what the moon in the 8th house is all about. You can be the healer. The 8th house, is the house of transformation, magic, like shamanism, alchemy. But it can be very self-destructive if the person is unwilling to do their part to change their life. Nicki seems to be someone who has channeled her whatever has gone on into her music. And by the way, it's important to note that if I'm not mistaken, Nicki had tapes, and that's how she got on the map, and then she just like did it herself, like do it yourself kinds of music, and that's how she first rose to prominence. And these kinds of things are very impressive to me because the person, the artist, is taking matters into their own hands. Certainly there are cases of manipulation which occur and make people famous, but there's a lot of hype. If you're very interested in that kind of thing, I don't know how many people listening to this would be interested, because you might be a lot younger than I was, but one of the heartthrobs of the latter part of the 70s was Leif Garrett, and he came out with an autobiography a couple of years ago that I read and I found really fascinating, because I really didn't know much about him personally, even though I was of that age in those days where he would have been a heartthrob, but I never saw him in anything. And I found out that he had so much hype attached to him, where they were trying to put him in a certain category. And this is the kind of thing, like being a pop singer, for instance, when he was really an actor, but he didn't get a lot of chances to do what he wanted to do. They kind of were trying to mold him. So the thing is that sometimes there's a lot of hype to get to the fame aspect of it, but sometimes the person is doing the legwork themselves, and that to me is like really cool when that happens. When I look at Nicki's 10th house of fame, well, it's, career, success, fame. She has 3 planets there, so that alone can show you that this is a very important area of her life. She has the sun, she has Jupiter and Uranus here. Jupiter in the 10th house, and let me see, it probably is in conjunction with so Jupiter's in conjunction with the midheaven. This will naturally give somebody a lucky break or some kind of luck associated with career matters. when I think of the word luck, I think of either the person is aligned with what they want to do, and that's certainly true for her, that she took it upon herself to do, and that's as I recall, that's what Doja Cat did too. And then she had some kind of video that was very kind of a novelty called Moo, and that kind of got a lot of hits unintentionally. And I think that, but I'm not so sure about Doja Cat because I think her father was also in the entertainment business, so you never know if anybody's pulling strings behind the scenes. So, as much as I would love to believe that it just happened organically, I don't know. I just can't say. But with Nicki, I don't think she had those connections. I could be wrong, but. So Jupiter, in conjunction with the ascendant or even in the 10th house itself, can be somebody who just has a lot of luck. They're in the right place at the right time type of deal. And maybe they have widespread popularity. Uranus in the 10th house can be kind of that lightning rod, that maybe that going viral, because Uranus is associated with technology, and she does have another stellium in the 11th house, another concentration of planets there as well. But the person may just have this image of, the public sees this a reputation of being very eccentric, but it doesn't bother them. It doesn't hurt them, in other words. Because the Jupiter is in conjunction with Uranus. And the sun is here, and that just can make a person very ambitious. And, that is something that we don't really talk about. Some people are more ambitious than others. And, who was it? Somebody famous said that success is 99% perspiration and 1% inspiration. I don't know if that's completely true, but I do think that people who are ambitious are going to fare better overall. Venus in the 11th house can give a kind of popularity to someone. And by the way, the 11th house is the collective, and it's also the internet. And I would like to propose that we consider the entertainment industry to be 11th house, because of it's also motion pictures. So anything that has to do with those kinds of mediums that we use, whether it's the internet or movies, the airwaves, radio. And she has Mercury here, so she may speak for others. She may be on the pulse. Like when people have plants in the 11th house, I feel like they have the pulse of the collective. And to me, I don't like to think of art as marketing, but it is a big business. So when you kind of your mind is plugged into what is happening, you can jump on trends. And this is the house of Aquarius. So Aquarius is always known as being ahead of its time. And so it can anticipate trends. And, because Nicki is ruled by Uranus, but also Saturn is associated with Aquarius too. But that Uranian connection can mean that she has the ability to be a trendsetter. And that can be very valuable in that type of industry, because whether it's the fashions and having Aquarius rising can be somebody who creates fashion trends. So I don't know if she has. Let me know if you know that. But she could certainly do it with being the one to be the nonconformist, to do things ahead of other people. And she has Neptune here, and I think that it's interesting because I think of star seeds, and I think of the younger generation who, to me, her generation is younger, and I feel like they are the ones that came into this reality with more intuitive ability. And I mean, she's on the older end of that, though. I'm thinking mostly of a lot younger people. But in any case, having Neptune here can be that open channel for the society as a whole. And that can have a spiritual meaning as well. And I feel like, as strange as this sounds, is that there can be a healing effect here, even though it seems very raw and it seems very, it can seem kind of nasty at times, the things that are being conveyed, but that it's almost like a purge. I don't know if that even makes sense, but the shadow, working with the shadow, having the moon in the 8th house can really bring up what other people are feeling as well. I think it's interconnected. A couple more observations here with Saturn and Pluto in the 9th house, which can be religion. I wonder if Nicki came from some sort of religious background that was very oppressive and was controlling. Not to pick on Christianity, but I just wanted to give this as an example. Like a fundamentalist religion that is very, very strict, and there are many things that you cannot do, or they're considered evil, or you're going to go to hell and that kind of thing. And if you have a lot of Sagittarius and you have this Aquarius rising, you can naturally rebel against that because you want to do things your own way. And Sagittarius rules the 9th house. That's why it's associated with God and, these belief systems, philosophies. But you have these two heavies, Saturn and Pluto there, and the person may have been oppressed by somebody else's belief system that was like a prison system. And, maybe some kind of like Jehovah's Witnesses or something like that. I don't know if she was part of any of that. Having the sun in Sag, or Sag placements, she has several of them, can make a person prophetic, given that 9th house connection. But also the water element or water houses can do the same. She has the moon, which is the intuitive heavenly body, in the 8th house, which is Scorpio's house. This can be somebody who is easy to hypnotize, who can channel. So maybe disincarnate entities, which is not necessarily something to fool around with, because, unless you really know what you're doing. But I'm just saying that, such a person may go into a trance and not even try to be going into it, because the moon is very receptive. Luckily, it's in Virgo, so that can be something that is very, more grounding because it's an earth sign. Hey, oh no, that was Rihanna. I was thinking, was Nicki pregnant? But that was actually Rihanna. Her moon is at 27 degrees of Virgo, and we just had a full moon at 27 Virgo. So that might be some kind of important turning point in her life in terms of her own, realizations about certain things that maybe she kind of kept, held down within herself. That's the shadow with the 8th house. And one last thing I wanted to say is with Mars in the 12th house, anybody who has Mars in the 12th house may have a hard time asserting themselves and being very, being able to express their anger in an appropriate way. She has a trine between the moon and Mars, which tends to indicate somebody who expresses anger appropriately and not, doesn't like flip out or anything like that. But because she has that square between Mars and Pluto, that might have been somebody in her life who did not allow her to express anger. It wasn't safe to do that. And so that kind of person can sit on their anger. And of course, as we know, that's not a good idea. So if anybody who is listening to this has the same placement, you have to learn that there are healthy ways to discharge anger and to also to express it to a person that you need to express it to. It's not like anger has to be something that where you're throwing things or flipping out in any way, yelling, screaming, calling names. So anyway, yeah, it's very interesting. I'm going to be looking up more information about her because I'm very curious. She has the North Node in the 5th house, which is the house of creativity, but also the house of love. So that can indicate that her mission was, that she is on her mission when it comes to being an artist. But she also has it in Cancer, and sometimes I think of that as the person who having, being a mother might be very important for their soul's mission. But, even though she's 40, if she's never had children, she still has time. She could adopt, or she could simply, be a mother to children in other ways. She can nurture children in other ways. It doesn't have to be giving birth. That is certainly not the only way you can do that. Maybe even with animals. Anytime that we take care of a helpless being, we are nurturing it, or even plants. So anyway, thanks for listening. If you would like a private reading, the link is below. Take care. Bye.